Settling this crowd down is about as hard as settling down a crowd in Lambeau Field. It's great to have everyone here. Welcome to the CEO Breakfast and Strategy Series. I'm Brian Brees, the president of St. Norbert College, and I'm delighted that we have a full stadium today. For 20 years, the CEO Series has been providing area executives with the opportunities to hear from some of our top area CEOs, and of course today is no different. This resource is brought to you through the generosity of our sponsors, the presenting sponsor, WPS Health Solutions, title sponsors, Myron Construction, Insight Publication, Johnson Bank and Johnson Insurance, and the sponsor for this session, JP Morgan. You have the information about the sponsors in the folders, but could you please give our sponsors a round of applause for their support? At this time, I'd like to ask Father Mike Brennan, College Chaplain and Director of the Norbert Team Vocations, to offer grace.
This morning, I'll start out with a little quote from Saint John Paul II, who was an avid sportsman, and they tell me a Packer fan. Athletic competition develops some of the noblest qualities and talents in people. They must learn the secret of their own bodies, their strengths and weaknesses, their struggles and breaking points. They must develop the capacity to concentrate and the habit of self-discipline through long hours of exercise and fatigue as they learn to take account of their own strength. They must also learn how to preserve energy for the final moment, when victory will depend upon a burst of speed or a last push of strength. I think we could have inserted CEOs or business leaders in there, and that would have worked very well as well. So we begin in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of sport, for the gift of athletes on the field and those that work behind the scenes, and especially the Green Bay Packers in this area and all that they have meant for our community. We thank you for the opportunity to gather this morning and to learn with our CEO and Packer President, Mark Murphy. We thank you and we ask your blessing upon this food and all that will be nourished by it. And we ask you to bless those that are not so fortunate as we are. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
What do you want to pursue there?
Yes, there's a committee.
And I just had to send my baby girl to daycare for the first time on Monday.
Before I introduce our speaker, I do want to clarify, I've gotten a lot of questions over the last few months. Everyone knows pretty much that I grew up in Wisconsin. I spent 5 years in Ohio, and so one thing I know about the NFL and fans, that does anybody know how long it takes a Green Bay Packer fan to become either a Browns or a Bengals fan? At least more than 5 years. Then I went to Minnesota, and I was there for 22 years, and it takes more than 22 years for a Packer fan to become a Vikings fan. And I'm not smart enough to have chosen to have been in Minnesota that 22 years, but thank you to the Green Bay Packers. It was a great time to be a Packer fan in Minnesota for all those years. But it's indeed a great privilege here, and it is my deep pleasure to introduce Mark Murphy. As everyone in this room knows, Mark has extensive experience in professional football and sports administration. He is in his 11th year as the Packers president and CEO. Under Mark's guidance, the organization continues to rank as one of the NFL's premier franchises. With highly successful operations both on and off the field, the team has compiled a 109-66-1 overall record during his tenure, made 8 straight playoff trips, and earned a Super Bowl victory. Off the field, the club continues to perform well in its business efforts, which allows the organization to support football operations and the fan experience at Lambeau, which continues to be ranked among the best in all sports. Mr. Murphy holds a law degree and MBA in finance, bringing a unique and highly qualified background to the Packers. His 8 years of experience as a player with the Washington Redskins, 16 years as director of athletics at Colgate and Northwestern Universities, his service as executive director for the NFL Players Association, and as a trial attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice has prepared him well for this role. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell appointed Mark to the NFL's Management Council Executive Committee, the Competition Committee, the College Relations Committee, and the Health and Safety Committee. Under Mr. Murphy's tenure, the Packers organization updated strategic and master plans, resulting in a wide variety of expansions, renovations, and additions to Lambeau Field and the adjacent properties. The newest, of course, is the highly successful Titletown district. Both Mark and his wife Lori are dedicated to the community and are involved in many local organizations devoted to youth and young athletes. Please welcome Mark Murphy.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for coming out this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, on behalf of the Packers, just wanted to say how proud we are of our relationship with St. Norbert College. Most of you probably know this, but just a few things to kind of highlight. It's the longest continuous relationship between a college and a professional football team. Goes back to the Lombardi era. Our players still train here, have training camp. I think we're the only team in the NFL that has a priest that travels with us, with Father Jim Baraniak. And Tom Kunkel is on our board, and I believe he's the only college president to have a Super Bowl ring. So, all right, well, we're here to talk a little bit about Titletown. So you can see, I have to mention, I don't know how many of you have noticed the Titletown logo. I'm very proud of that, spent a lot of money on it. I hope you can all see the goalpost in the middle. So those are the kinds of things that we've been dealing with the last few years. All right, Lambeau Field today. Brian talked a little bit about Lambeau Field, but just a couple things. We're very proud of Lambeau Field, and from my position, Lambeau Field's probably one of the biggest assets that we have as an organization. Interestingly, it's not the oldest stadium in the NFL, but has the longest continuous use. Soldier Field in Chicago is technically older. When you sit in the bowl in Lambeau Field, you're having the same experience that people did when they were watching Lombardi coach. And I think that's part of what makes Lambeau Field special. We're the only stadium, excuse me, the other thing, you know, it's changed a lot over the years. When it was built in '57, did Myron build it? You've done most of the building for us, but I know you didn't. But it was about 30,000 was the capacity, and I'll talk a little in a second. But so it's grown over the years, but the bowl has remained pretty much the same, and it's the only stadium in the NFL that has a majority of the seats that are bench seats. And I do hear a lot of complaints from people, why don't you get rid of the bench seats? Well, here's the deal. If we did, we studied it, and if we put seats in where the benches are, we would lose 10,000 in seating capacity. And I don't see anybody raising their hands and saying, yeah, take mine. So, just, you know, I would say a couple things. We've been very, very fortunate. So over the last 10 to 15 years, we've been able to invest a lot of money in the stadium, really with a focus on improving the fan experience. And you know, two things have made that possible. Number one was the major renovation that was supported by the sales tax in 2003. That really changed Lambeau Field from a facility that was used 10 times a year for our games to now where it's used year-round. And obviously with the atrium and the space there, this past year we had over 700 different events. And so it's constantly used. And that was one of the thoughts with Titletown, was to really utilize and take advantage of the space that we have at Lambeau and to build on of Lambeau Field as a destination. So rather than people just coming for 2 days, now with Titletown, they'll stay 3, 4. So that was really kind of the focus. But over the last, and then, so obviously the renovation in 2003 was crucial. And then I would say the collective bargaining agreement that we are in now, it's a 10-year agreement, has really allowed us to, it's given us financial certainty, and it's allowed us to really invest money that we wouldn't normally be able to do if we were in a different situation. So just quickly, we added the south end zone. I don't know if we have a speaker, but you can see it's the higher end on the top there. We added about almost 8,000 seats. We're now the second largest stadium in the NFL with approximately 81,432 seats. We did an atrium renovation. We just finished a 2-year suite renovation. We added the Johnsonville Tailgate Village. We put in new video boards. We've got new sound system. So we're investing in the stadium with a focus on the fan experience. So this is obviously an overhead picture of Titletown. Looks a little different than it does right now, but you can see it's land directly west of the stadium. And to give credit to the organization, as far back, probably 15, 20 years ago, they knew that land around the stadium would be valuable, and so they started purchasing it. If you remember the Kmart, I would say it's probably a good sign. When we knocked down the Kmart, nobody complained. So, and I hope what we have there now, people will view as an improvement. Unless you worked for Kmart, I think most people, it wasn't really bringing a lot to the community, and hopefully we've enhanced it. But that was something we purchased. And then really over the last, I'd say 7 to 8 years, we've really started the planning process and looking at what can we do specifically, development around the stadium. We've looked at what other teams have done specifically, particularly within the league. We looked at New England, liked some of the things that they did, but we wanted something that was really unique to Green Bay. Kind of although technically not part of Titletown, our partnership with Cabela's, we think is, in a lot of ways, really gave us a confidence that, this is something that's going to work in the area. So Cabela's, I'm sure most of you are aware, it's right at the intersection of 41 and Lombardi. It was very interesting. We had discussions with Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's, and Bass Pro Shop eventually said, you're too small a market, and so they passed on the opportunity. Cabela's looked at it and said, it's a smaller market, but we think the connection to Lambeau Field and the Packers could be very positive. So they've been in there about 5 years now, and Cabela's roughly has 50 stores across the country. And although we're by far the smallest market they're in, last year their store was number 4 in terms of total revenue. So I think the connection with Lambeau, but also it's really well located. You're on the way to Door County, on the way to the North Woods. So that's been very pleased. And the funny part of that is Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's merged. So, we're one big happy family. So Titletown, this gives you a shot. You can see obviously before the development, but you can see those were the goals. We wanted to provide a benefit and provide economic development to the community. And as an organization, we really have 2 main goals. Number one, obviously, is to win championships, and the other one is very unique, and that's to make sure that we stay in Green Bay. And for the long term, one of our thoughts was, if we can be successful with Titletown and really improve the economic strength of this community, this is going to ensure that the Packers remain in Green Bay and can remain competitive. We're in a situation now with a collective bargaining agreement where we have a salary cap, we have revenue sharing, but things can change pretty quickly within the league, and we want to make sure that for the long term we can continue to be competitive. So there you can see just some of the objectives. Wanted it to be unique to Green Bay, and I'll show you in a minute. I mentioned before what the Patriots have done outside of their stadium. They call it Patriot Place, and there's some very nice aspects to it, but in a lot of ways it's really a big mall next to a stadium. And ours, we wanted it to be a little more integrated. And the other thing that's very unique about ours is we dedicated roughly a quarter of the space to public park and plaza, tubing hill, things of that nature that most private developers would not do. So this gives you a picture with development obviously has started. So it's 45 acres, all directly west of the stadium. Then we have 3 what we call anchors, and first one, hinterland, and all what we're really proud of have Wisconsin-based, really northeast Wisconsin-based. Hinterland, obviously very successful restaurant and brewery downtown, really had outgrown their space. And I think the mayor would admit it's kind of been a win-win. You know, they were able to move into a bigger space and grow, and they backfilled their space with Copper State Brewing, which has done well. So I think that was a very positive thing, and they're doing extremely well. They were the first one to move in. I believe they moved in last April. So it's hard, you know, it feels like Titletown's been up for a while, but it's just barely been a little bit over a year. Lodge Kohler, you can see obviously the Kohler reputation. People in this area know it, but this is the first 4-diamond hotel in the area. And what we had heard, and you can see obviously Lodge Kohler is pretty close to Lambeau Field. We have a lot of different events in Lambeau Field, and we had heard from a lot of different people who host events here that, you know, we really like Green Bay, but it'd be really nice if you had a better hotel. And so we lost out on some conferences, some conventions that we're able to get now because of Lodge Kohler. So that was the trade-off or that was the understanding with Lodge Kohler, was they don't have event space, they don't have meeting space there, but they utilize all of our space. So that's gone well. And they have a spectacular spa. If you haven't been, please, men and women, it's very nice. And fitness facility, so that's been a nice addition. And then the last anchor to open up was Bellin Health. It's a long name, Bellin Health Titletown Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. And really, they've done great. Our team physician is affiliated with them, Pat McKenzie. He's been very, very helpful in terms of attracting other orthopedists. We have a man named Bob Anderson, who is a leading foot and ankle specialist in the United States. And last August, there were 10 NFL players that were here in Green Bay having surgery because Bob Anderson's here. So, and if you watch ESPN now, they'll say, you know, so-and-so's here having surgery at Bellin Health Sports Medicine Clinic. So that's been a really nice addition, and they're doing all kinds of things in the community. They have a walk-in clinic where if you have a sports injury, you can go in and they'll diagnose it. So we're really very proud of our 3 anchors. So this gives you an idea of just kind of the site plan. A bunch of letters that I'm not really sure what they mean, but I think I'll be able to talk a little more in detail about. But A is Lodge Kohler, you can see. D is what we cleverly are calling Building 1, and that's going to house Titletown Tech. And I'm going to get into that a little more in detail. J will be commercial, retail, entertainment. K will be and this is probably, you're going to probably see this over the next 2 to 3 years, this built out. K will be an office tower. A tower in Green Bay is 4 to 5 stories. So it's not going to be too high. But we're excited about that. M will be an apartment complex, multi-family unit. And then L, N, P, and the P's, those will be a variety of townhouses and as well as condominiums. Roughly a quarter of the area is dedicated to public park and plaza. I've got some pictures, but we're really proud of that. I think, we obviously this is our first winter. We've gone, it hasn't been a year yet. I think the public park and plaza area we opened up right around training camp. So we're kind of learning as we go, but you see a lot of people there, and what I've heard from people is, this is really something that you wouldn't normally see in a city the size of Green Bay. Some of the things we have are similar to what they have in Chicago in their Millennium Park, things of that nature. And there's the Titletown Tech building. I'll show you that in a minute. All right. So this gives you just some of the specific parts of the park and plaza. On the Aaron's Hill, I see Dan is here. Where is Dan? I know. Yeah. Dan, thank you, Dan, for your sponsorship of Aaron's Hill. You took a chance on us. It was kind of a concept. So I'll tell you just quickly on how the concept of the tubing hill came about. So we did a lot of focus groups. We talked to a lot of people. We wanted to make sure that whatever we built, particularly the public park and plaza area, was something that was really, that our community would use. And so we had focus groups, and one of the things that kept coming up was, you know, the winters are long in Green Bay. We really want something that brings us together and outside in the winter. And Ann Pattison, I don't know how many of you know her, she's on our stadium district board, she's an attorney in town. She said, what about a tubing hill? So that's a great idea. The problem is there aren't a lot of natural hills around, around Lambeau Field. So we had to build the hill, and so you can see that on the picture on the right. So we created the structure, and I'll show you that. And that was a very interesting concept. But the tubing hill, I don't know how many of you had a chance to utilize it this winter, but was really well received in the community. We designed the tubing hill so that it would be exciting for a 13-year-old. So I went down 7 times, and it is exciting for a 62-year-old as well. Maybe a little more exciting. So the tubing hill, and then what the other thing that's really exciting about it is the connection between the tubing hill and the skating pond and trail. So the skating trail, similar to what I don't know if people have been down to Chicago, Millennial Park, but they have a skating trail there, the Maggie Daly skating trail. This is kind of unique, but you can skate underneath the hill, and you know, when the weather, the issues we had with the tubing and the skating to a lesser degree, it was really weather dependent. So we had unfortunately, between Christmas and New Year's, it was well below 0 in the wind chill factor. So we could make snow, but it was so cold nobody wanted to be outside. And then if it's too warm, it's hard to make snow. So the ideal temperature had to be, you know, somewhere between 35 and 5 degrees. But it got a lot of use during our busiest day. I think we had 1,700 people tubing and more than 2,000 skating. The football, this is another aspect of Titletown. We are a football team, so we had to have a football field. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but it's packed. And we don't schedule it that often. We have a few different events, but people just love to go out and play catch. And a lot of people in the community were better field goal kickers than we thought, because we did not have a net protecting the playground, and there were a lot of balls flying into so we put up a net. And so the field's been popular, and then the playground, what we tried to do there is we wanted something that was unique to Green Bay, so we studied, well, I didn't study, we had had people that look at these things, look at all the different playgrounds in the area, and come up with something that was unique. And so you can see it's really it's a great playground. It's NFL Combine theme, so you can do a lot of the drills that you see the players do at the NFL Combine. And the most popular area is the 40-yard dash. So you can time yourself in the 40-yard dash, and then after you pull your hamstring, you can go right over to the Bell and Health Sports Medicine Clinic. We have a activity area. You can see, you know, ping pong, horseshoes, bocce ball. Again, you know, just something, and those have been well received by the community. I mentioned before, in order to create the hill, we had to build a structure, and so this is the structure. And so you've got 3 different levels to it actually, and the first level is a cafe, 46 below. Interestingly, it's 46 below was the temperature, wind chill temperature in the ice bowl. So it was 46 below, and it is also 46 feet below the top of the hill. So it's just kind of worked out, and we think it's very clever. So and then on top of it is event space where you can rent out space for conferences, meetings. That's called the Rockwood Terrace. And you can see some of the pictures there. The part of those of you that know Packers history, the Rockwood Lodge that Curly Lambeau purchased, and where the Packers practiced, had training camp before, I believe, coming here. Pictures that are really interesting, some of the unique history of the Packers. And then on top of Aaron's Hill, in the summer, it's event space that can be used. That's where the sledding obviously starts. And then that can be used for meetings, weddings, things of that nature. And there is a bar up on top as well. Just another picture. You can see the one on the left. One of the things we did, we had a winter Jubilee, and there was a light show between roughly 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's. It was very popular and really helped bring people out. We thought especially the first winter was important to have something like that to bring people out to Titletown. There you can see another picture of the Lodge Kohler. Titletown Tech, I just wanted to talk briefly about this. We're really excited about this partnership. We're partnering with Microsoft. They have just been, obviously, they have a great reputation and one of the 4 or 5 leading companies in the world. And we are very, very fortunate. The president and CEO of Microsoft is from the Appleton area. As a huge Packers fan, I've been to his house. He has a Packers room, and he showed me proudly all the things he had. But he's just a great, Brad Smith's his name, great person. He really wants his legacy to be that he's made significant changes in Northeast Wisconsin. And so he sees this as one of the things that he can really do for his legacy. And we think, of all the things we've done in Titletown, this has the potential to have the biggest impact. And so it's a partnership between the Packers and Microsoft. It's three different parts of it. There's a venture capital fund, and both Microsoft and the Packers have pledged to put $5 million in that to get it started. There'll be a venture studio. Probably a lot of you are wondering, what is a venture studio? It's basically the accelerator or the incubator. So this is where we're going to be. Hopefully startup, local businesses, local entrepreneurs can come if they have concepts and really help create. And it'll be a variety of different businesses, although technology and sports with Microsoft's expertise as well as ours will be a focus. And then you can see the Innovation Lab. There will actually be Microsoft employees that are here, so companies in the area that are having technology issues, can go to Titletown Tech and the Innovations Lab, and people will work with them on those. So this gives you an idea of the building. This is directly to the west of Hinterland. We broke ground on that. I believe that we were scheduled to break ground the day of the 25-inch snowstorm that hit us. So we're a little bit slowed, but a spectacular building with the atrium in the middle. This gives you some pictures of concepts or sketches from inside the building. And so just a little bit, just talk about some of the things we're looking at. So the next phase of Titletown, you can see on the right, there'll be retail, dining, and entertainment. Office tower will be. So if for your bearings, next time you drive by there, it'll go all the way to the Shell station. So that gives you a concept. It's a pretty large area, obviously 45 acres. And then Brookwood will have townhouses on both sides of the road. All right, I've gone on and on, but I did want to make sure I left time. I think the timing is not too bad. Just any questions you have about Titletown, our draft, why we traded down in the first round. Yeah, I was telling we were talking earlier on our website. We have I do a column once a month. It's called Murphy Takes 5. I take 5 questions. My kids said, "Really, Dad? Only 5 questions? You can only take 5? Couldn't you take 6 some months?" But so people can email me through the column. And so in the draft in the first round, when we had the 14th pick and we traded down to 27, I got deluged by emails in my Murphy Takes 5. You're a bunch of idiots. What are you doing? But I would say this. We've made a lot of changes this year, And I'm really pleased with our new general manager, Brian Gutekunst. Thought the way he handled the draft, I mean, he looked like a polished veteran. And despite what some of those people in my email said, I thought we ended up with a pretty good deal. You always, your first round draft picks are very, very valuable because you can get impact players there. And for us, through all the maneuvering to end up with New Orleans Saints' #1 pick next year is, we may not appreciate it this year, but believe me, next year we're going to really appreciate it. And we also have a very vested interest now in rooting against the Saints. So. We'd like to have the #1 pick in the draft next year. Yeah, you had a question back there.
Yeah, I get this question a lot when I travel. Who actually owns the stadium, and how is the Packers? What's the Packers' relationship with the owner?
It's a very good question. So the stadium is actually owned by the city, and we both I think we have a great relationship with a stadium district board that manages it. Now, I believe, so they own the city. Actually, if you look at it, everything around us is east and west, and to the south is Ashwaubenon, but they've carved out the parking lot, and so we're actually in Green Bay. And I think it's really, the relationship has worked well. So they own the land, they own the area, but I think we own the improvements. I think that's correct, right, Mayor? So the improvements that we've added, those actually belong to the Packers. But I think we all treat it, it's a tremendous community asset. One of the things I would say, when you look at Lambeau Field, compared to other stadiums, and with my position, I'm able to travel with a team to every game, and you see so many of the other stadiums that just it's clear they're not putting the money into it, and they're not investing in it, and it's just, particularly the back of house is just it's run down, and so for us, one of the best parts of the sales tax is we put on an annual basis, it's anywhere from 10 to 12 million into maintenance of the stadium, and it really makes a difference. And so we want to make sure that Lambeau Field continues on into the future. And I talked a little bit about it. That's one of the challenges. Part of what makes Lambeau Field unique is it's old, it's historic, but people expect modern amenities. And so how do you add the modern amenities in a way where you don't take away from what makes Lambeau Field special? So I think that's kind of the balancing act that, the video boards are really nice. They didn't have video boards when Vince was coaching, but now if you don't have video boards, people understand. The other thing I didn't mention, about 3 or 4 years ago, we put $5 million into upgrading our Wi-Fi, because more and more, our fans, they want immediately be able to. A lot of them are following their fantasy teams, or they want to take pictures and be able to text their friends, things of that nature. Other questions? Yeah.
When will the Packers host the NFL draft?
Oh, when will the Packers host the NFL draft? I thought you were going to ask Super Bowl. Well, Super Bowl will be, I would say, a very, very long shot. A couple things with the Super Bowl. Well, number one, the weather in early February is usually not ideal, and we don't have a dome. The other thing is, and it ties in a little bit to what the draft would look at. The NFL has a requirement in order to host a Super Bowl. You have to have 30,000 hotel rooms within an hour radius, and I believe we're about 8,000, so we're 22,000 short. So we'd have to go on an incredible building spree. But in terms of the draft, actually, I think there's a chance. What's the old line? So you're telling me there's a chance. So I don't want to say put odds on it, but it's very different than the Super Bowl process. There aren't specific requirements. Those of you that probably follow it know. I mean, for years the league held a draft. I think 30 straight years in New York. About 4 or 5 years ago, they decided to move it around. And so it was in Chicago for 2 years, Philadelphia, and then Dallas this year. And so the league is now, they're going to move it, I think, every year. It looks like it's going to go to Nashville next year. We have applied to host it in 2021 or 2022. And our thought process there was by that time, Titletown will be further developed. We're also, we think the Brown County Arena will be down by then and replaced with an expo hall, hopefully. And part of our plan for hosting the draft, we would have a lot of events tied into the expo hall, as well as the rec center. So actually, Roger Goodell was here. He was our keynote speaker at our all organization meeting, and Larry McCarron asked Roger, is there a chance that the Packers would host a draft? And he actually said, yes, I think the Packers will host a draft. He didn't say when. So, but the issue is every single NFL city is interested in hosting the draft. So I think eventually, the league will try to get across every community. This year in Dallas, there were 300,000 people there. So I'm trying to imagine Green Bay. It'll be a little crowded. But I think it would be, you look at where we're located, we would draw fans from obviously all across the state. I think Bear fans, Viking fans would find it easy to come here. I think it would certainly be great for the community. Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
Mark, for the future developments to the west there, the office, retail, your 4-story skyscraper business center, how are those structured? Are those land leases? Is it something the Packers are going to own the structures? What?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the same could apply, the same issue for Lodge Kohler and our other partners. Normally, what we've done, and each negotiation or each lease is a little different, but we own the land, and we entered into long-term leases with the companies. And I'm not an accountant. I believe they own the buildings, but we own the land, and then we have long-term leases. What's that?
You're not doing any of the actual buildings.
No, they've done it. No.
That's how you continue that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, the 3 anchors all have strong ties here. I think you'll see the same with with the office tower and some of the different people that we'll work with. One of the thoughts is, we want it to have a local feel, but with some of the dining and maybe some of the entertainment, if it's similar to Cabela's. Cabela's would not have come here were it not for the connection with Lambeau Field and the Packers. And so I think with some of the commercial and particularly entertainment and dining, we might have an opportunity to bring some companies or businesses here that would normally not come to Green Bay because of our demographics, because of the size of the community. But the chance to be a part of Titletown, something that's unique, I think that can help us. One thing I didn't mention, in our research for Titletown, one of the things that and this goes back several years, one of the things that kept coming up was Green Bay was at a really big disadvantage relative to similar cities across the country in terms of the percentage of college graduates in our community. And so one of the things we looked at is what kind of things can we do to make this area more attractive to young professionals and young college graduates. So I think having something like Titletown, and then particularly I think Titletown Tech could be helpful in terms of bringing more young professionals to the area. Now, I'm not a snob that we want more college graduates because they're better people, but businesses that look at communities, one of the things they look at is, all right, how many college graduates in the area, because college graduates make more money, spend more money, and that is a factor that different companies like Bass Pro Shop look at when making decisions. Yeah, you had a question?
What are you thinking in terms of future planning for concussions with football players?
Yeah, it's a good question about the concussions related. Well, this is a huge issue, not just for the NFL, but for football at all levels. And it's, I think when you look back over the last 10 years, Brian mentioned a couple of committees I'm on. I'm on particularly the competition committee. It's basically the committee that determines the rules, looks at the rules of the game. And almost every rule that we've passed in recent years has had some safety component. So we're trying to make the game as safe as possible. This year particularly, I think we passed a rule regarding use of the helmet. And one of the things that's happened over the years, we have allowed the helmet to become used as a weapon. It's really designed it's protective. It's meant to protect players, not to be utilized by players as a weapon. And so you'll see this year, and it passed unanimously by the owners, we're going to prohibit players from lowering their head and initiating contact with their helmet. And so it's not only to protect the players getting hit, but also the hitters and the hittees. We're also taking a hard look at the kickoff. Kickoff is by far the most dangerous play in the NFL. You are, in all of football, you are 5 times more likely to have a concussion on a kickoff than a play from scrimmage. So we're making some pretty dramatic changes to the kickoff. What we've done over the last 5 years or so, we've made changes to lower the number of kickoffs. We moved the kickoff up so the kickers, it's easier from the 30 to 35, so it's easier for them to kick the ball in the end zone. And we moved the touchback from the 20 to the 25s to incentivize teams not to take it out of the end zone. But the changes you'll see for this year, we're actually going to vote on them this next week, will be specifically to try to make the kickoff safer rather than just have fewer plays. But it's a huge issue for the league. The other thing we've done as a league, we entered into a major settlement with our former players, and that will be over a 60 to 5 year period. We'll pay out over $1 billion to players that have had cognitive issues related to, and well, they don't have to show that it's related to football. So if you're a former player and you have dementia, you'll be able to get grants from the settlement.
Do you have any personal experience with that while you were playing?
Yeah. Well, do you have a reason for asking that? It's funny. I did when the position. We look at it, we study it. The position that I played, defensive back, is one of the higher in terms of the number of concussions. You're more likely to get concussions. The people that get concussions tend to be in the speed positions where the hits are at more full speed. I had 2 concussions in college, and I went to Colgate, played at Colgate. I had an awful helmet. It was an old suspension helmet, but I'm not suing Colgate. But then when I got to the NFL, I went to a better helmet, and I didn't have any concussions in the NFL. Now my wife says, Mark, it doesn't matter if you had your concussion. If you had it in college or the NFL, it's still a concussion. But so no, I knock on wood. I was, I think I think all of us as former players, you worry, because when I was playing, no, you never thought, oh well, this could cause long-term issues. It would, we just thought, and actually, at the time, the coaches and doctors would say, well, no, you're fine. You just got your bell rung. You'll be. Yeah. Now the other thing that's interesting, when I was playing, I used to get what are called stingers or burners all the time. So basically, you get hit and your shoulder, and you're stretching the neck, so the nerves in the neck, and your hand would go numb. And players still get it, but some of the players, what we found was when they actually were getting concussions, what they would say is, no, I'm fine, I just got a burner. And they would use that to try to get out of having to go into the concussion protocol. So now if you have a burner, you have to go into the concussion protocol. Now, I'll tell just a quick funny story. It was when I was playing with the Redskins, and I was the defensive signal caller, so I called all the defenses, and I was kind of reluctant to come out of the game. So I got a pretty bad burner, and my arm was numb. Your arm goes numb, so I couldn't lift it. And so the play, and it usually would come back after a play or two. So the one play, so I went up to intercept the ball. I was in a position to intercept it, but I couldn't raise my right arm. So I just knocked the ball down with my left hand. And my position coach, a man named Richie Pettibone, said, "Mark, what the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Richie, my arm was numb. I couldn't." I said, but no, those are some of the things that you wonder what's going on there. But no, it's a huge issue for the league, and it's really an issue I think for all. Hockey is dealing with it. Obviously, some of the hits they have. And at the youth level, the concussion rate in girls soccer is higher than any other sport. And I believe at the youth level in soccer, they've banned heading until a certain age. Because, obviously now the other thing, so you have the big hits where you're knocked unconscious or suffer a concussion. The other thing that's a real issue for us, and we're studying, is particularly in offensive and defensive linemen, it's the repetitive subconcussive blows that it's not enough to cause a concussion, but over time can cause problems, and that's something that we're studying as well. And we're actually looking at are there some things that we can do to reduce some of those hits that linemen absorb. The other thing we've done is we practice less. There's no more two-a-days, so that the players. I've often said I think Vince Lombardi's rolling over in his grave if he watched our practices. It's changed, and we know more now than we did then, and I think the changes are necessary and good for the game. Yeah, Dan.
Can you define a catch now?
I can. Yes. Dez Bryant. So Dan asked. One of the things that we talked a lot about this year at our annual meeting was trying to make it a little clearer as to what is a catch. And so for those of you that remember in the NFC Championship game a few years ago, the Dez Bryant, it was ruled not a catch, now would be a catch. So it's control of the ball, 2 feet, and then the ability to make a football act. Now and the football act can be diving for the end zone. So that's what I think Dez Bryant was doing. He caught it and was moving. At the time, though, the standard was control of the ball, 2 feet, and ability to become a runner. Well, if you're falling to the ground, you obviously can't become a runner. And that's where we got into this, where if you're going to the ground, you have to survive the ground. And if you remember when he hit the ground, the ball popped up, and then he caught it again. So, but the rule is not retroactive. And I said, even if they would have scored, we would have won the game. We would have come back and scored. They weren't going to stop us. So, all right, yeah.
Mark, the Sports Illustrated did an article. The Packers are the 5th most valuable franchise in all sports.
Are you going to buy the team there?
We were just talking at our table about the Panthers. I mean, is there any possibility that could happen? That the team be purchased?
Well, hopefully not, Mayor. No. Well, first of all, Sports Illustrated periodically, Forbes on an annual basis does. They provide a valuation or they give their estimate of what each team is worth. And for us, it's really meaningless because we can't be sold. There is language, going back, I think, in some of the bylaws of the organization where if the Packers were ever to be sold, all of the proceeds would go, Dan, I think it was the Moose Lodge? Yeah. So, I mean, unless the Moose Lodge is in dire need. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think, well, you know, the mayor raises a good point. You know, so the Carolina Panthers, it'll be approved next week in Atlanta. They're going to be sold for $2.2 billion, and apparently it's cash. So it's David Tepper. It's actually a little less than they were asking. I think they were hoping to get $2.5 billion. It's the most that a team has ever sold for. Actually, the previous high was the Buffalo Bills. And so you can imagine, you know, Buffalo is a fairly small market. Carolina, although it's a growing, you know, Charlotte's a growing market, you can imagine what Dallas and New York and LA teams are worth. But, you know, so that's, in terms of our the valuation for us, it really is kind of meaningless. But it does point out, you know, I think why we need to be doing what we're doing in terms of investing in the stadium, investing in the area around the stadium. You know, we've got 2 teams in LA now. We've got, you know, teams in new stadiums. You know, when you see what teams are doing in the new stadiums, they don't compare to Lambeau Field, but the money that they can generate from these new stadiums is pretty significant. You know, the good example, the San Francisco 49ers, their old stadium, Candlestick, was, you know, kind of an iconic stadium, but you know, they had dropped where, even though they were in a huge market, they were in the bottom. They were one of the bottom teams in terms of revenue. They built a new stadium. They actually moved from San Francisco. Now they're in Santa Clara, the San Jose area, and they went. I think now they're 3rd or 4th in terms of league in terms of total revenue. So it really makes a big difference. That's why one of the things we're proud of, and it's not, you know, just that, you know, despite being in the smallest market by far in the NFL, this past year we were 8th in the league in terms of total revenue, and so that's a tribute to our fans. And you know, where we do very well in terms of merchandise sales with our pro shop. We're usually 1st or 2nd with the Cowboys, and then although we don't sell the naming rights to the stadium, hopefully it'll always be Lambeau Field because that means so much to us. We are not above selling the naming rights to the gates, though, and we add gates. So we just announced yesterday the Quick Trip was now a gate sponsor. So every one of our gate sponsors is a Wisconsin-based company. So it's pretty amazing. Brian, maybe one more question is yeah.
How are you feeling about the new organizational structure that you put in place?
The question is, what do I feel? How do I feel about the new organizational structure that put in place? Well, since I put it in place, I hope I feel good about it. No, I am. It's different, although it's not as different as I think some of the media has laid out. But basically, just so I don't know how many people know. So basically, before the general manager reported to me, and the head coach and the vice president of football administration reported to the general manager. Now the head coach, the GM, Brian Gutekunst, and I don't have Mike McCarthy's our head coach, reports to me, and then Russ Ball, who's our vice president of administration and director of football operations. All 3 report to me. Just kind of the thought process there is, Brian is a new general manager. I wanted to kind of narrow his responsibilities and really allow him to focus on what's most important for him, and that's the draft, that's putting together a 90-man roster, determining the 53-man roster, so I think it's worked well. We meet on a regular basis. I'm not, it's like although I supervise them, I'm not making football decisions. They're making the decisions. But I think the communication has improved. I talked a little bit about it. I think in any organization over time, sometimes silos can be created. And I think this structure has been helpful in terms of improving communication, particularly within football operations. And I think the main thing was, though, particularly with Brian, to allow him to really focus on the areas that are most important And the other thing, quite honestly, is it was a promotion for Russ Ball. Russ Ball has been very valuable to us over the years. And after the season, we went through the search process, and Ted Thompson transitioned to a senior advisory role. As I got through the search process, it was pretty clear to me that the two most valuable people that I needed to keep were, in addition to Mike McCarthy, were Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball. And so this structure really, I think, was able to achieve that. But it's like anything else. It's like the draft. Time will tell. So hopefully, I think I was very pleased with the draft, and hopefully in 3 years when you ask me, I'll be even more pleased. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I do have one more question. Do you know how many people were at the Ice Bowl?
I think it's like 300,000.
Yeah, it's about everybody that I've talked to that was born before the Ice Bowl was there. But I want to confess, I was born 6 months before the Ice Bowl. I was not there. I would like to just on behalf of this entire room say thank you for your leadership for the Packers and your focus on the community. I know when you played in the league, you made all the defensive calls, and we're really delighted that you're making all the calls right now for the Green Bay Packers. So, Mark, thank you very much. If you'd like a copy of this, we can get that video to you. If you know where Amy Sorensen is, you contact Amy if you'd like a copy of today's remarks. This is the largest and the last CEO series of this year. And the St. Norbert College will have a day a lot like the day that the Packers released their schedule. When we release the schedule for next year's CEO Breakfast Series this summer, we'll push a note out. You'll see it on our website, but we look forward to your continued involvement with our CEO Breakfast Series. I'd like to give one last bit of an acknowledgement to our sponsors that are in the room and represented up here. Thank you again to our sponsors. Give them a round of applause. And that concludes our breakfast series for this morning. Have a great summer, and we'll see you next fall. Thank you very much.